Hi, guys. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Dharma Talk. I'm Rabia Ilahia, psychotherapist here in Houston, Texas. For any of you that are joining for the first time, the word Dharma can mean many things. It can be purpose, our purpose. It can be right action or doing the right thing. So I created Dharma Talk so that I can share with you right and true information that I've had the privilege to learn over the years, both in education, in my access to education and type of education, and the opportunities I've had over the many years. My number one intention is to be of service to you in the highest way I can be, so that you are getting absolutely the best information I know, and hopefully gaining awareness. I believe that when we know better, when we're informed, we have the opportunity to make better choices. And most of us want to make better choices. Not that I always do, but that's my goal. And I want us to thrive in our lives, because the happier we are, the healthier we are in mental ways, emotional, physical ways, the kinder we are, the more compassionate we are, the better, it sounds lofty, but the better the world gets, because we are better in ourselves. Today's show is Women and Wellness, and I wanted to do Dharma Talk on this particular topic because I believe that if a woman is well, then all the people she takes care of have more of an opportunity to be well too. And there's so much that has been put on women, especially during the pandemic. So many women left the workforce. There were issues of childcare. Many women are taking care of their kids as well as perhaps a parent or parents. So there's just been a lot of stress. Not that it hasn't been stressful for men, but it's been especially, I think, challenging for women. And I know that as a woman, our biology is complex, our hormones are complex, our duties are complex and manifold. And modern medicine is great. I can speak to it firsthand, having parents who were physicians, and basically every ailment my sisters or I had, they would solve with medication, pharmaceutical medication. And I don't think it addressed all of me. I'll just speak for me. It didn't address emotional issues. Medicine stops like here or just at the body. And we don't go into how everything is so interconnected. Our spiritual life, our personal life, our emotional life, our thinking, our habits, daily habits. And when we don't do things that are good for us, the emotional reasons behind that. And also, I wanted to present information today that is also accessible, not just to people that have financial privilege or healthcare privilege, insurance privilege. I wanted to bring information to light that could help so many of us without differentiating based on privilege. So the two guests I have today, I'm super excited about. They are both experts in their fields, and I have tons and tons of respect for them. Crystal Hadnot and Monica Robertson. Dr. Monica Robertson, Dr. Crystal Hadnot. I have gotten them to agree to join us and have a very robust conversation on women and our wellness throughout our lifespan. So, Crystal and Monica, yay. Hi, Monica. We're having trouble with Monica's video, so hopefully everyone can hear Monica. And there's Crystal. Many of you know Crystal already, but Crystal is a student of nutrition, and you became that after going through a medical crisis in your 20s,
Yes.
where you were diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And so you did, I think, hundreds of hours of research on the healing properties of food, and you became passionate about nutrition and the science also behind the food to create an integrative wellness program. I think you started with yourself as a guinea pig.
Yes. So really it was, and I was 21, and what happened is my colon basically, for the most part, stopped working. And the doctors were like, like I told you, there's if your heart stops, you can jumpstart your heart, but it's nothing that can like jumpstart your colon, right? So it was something, it wasn't complete colon failure, but basically my colon was malfunctioning. And so, and I wasn't able to process foods, and I was 21, didn't really realize what was going on until one day I went to the doctor because my stomach was was hurting so bad. I had started to lose my appetite. My food felt like when I swallow, it wasn't going down, and I was just concerned. And then the first question, once they touched my stomach, they asked me, when was the last time I had a bowel movement? And I had and I thought about it, and I was like, ooh, I think like 3 months, And that was like a whoa. And not realizing that, that there was an issue going on. And the issue kind of found out was, things that we don't do, which you should do, specifically in African-American cultures, and I'm sure in other cultures too, but in African-American culture, we don't really discuss medical history. Kind of found out it was something that ran in my family history as far as like having colon issues. But that piqued my interest, and I started to take classes. But then, fast forward maybe like 5 or 6 years later, I had this freak accident where I had paralysis from hip to foot on one side. And I remember going back to doing research from my colon issue about kept hearing about like the healing properties of food and what it can do for the mechanics of the body. And so I started to really look at that for the paralysis, and saw some good stuff. And that kind of like then changed my perspective, I guess, on food, and started to really deep dive into the food science, but really kind of, I always say, develop my methodology around it. And how I practice was really when I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease about 6 years ago. Because how I saw food became very different through a different lens. Because at this point, I'm thinking, oh, I'm healthy. I'm running marathons. I'm a nutritionist at this point. How did I get sick? And so my methodology around nutrition and food began to change and started to look at the whole body and understanding how other factors such as stress manifests in the body as well. And so, and not just looking at it from a food perspective. And really what the saying that I developed was meals and movement mimics our morals and our mood and how our body respond to it.
I like that. Say that again.
I say meals and movement mimics your moral and your mood, which then manifests in how your body operates. Because where I was feeding my body nutritious foods, I was moving my body in an effective manner, but I was still stressed, wasn't getting sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and just all these other factors, and really, understanding how our life can manifest in our body physically. And that's where basically the overriding of inflammation, and I'm sure Dr. Monica can really talk about how inflammation is probably the root causes of a lot of chronic illnesses and how that shows up, and understanding the connection between stress and inflammation and just a whole other things when your body is already not operating
Yes.
on a full spectrum, or on in homeostasis, or in complete balance.
So,
So that's kind of where how I got started, and just how I really developed how I now view nutrition, because it's not just about food. It's so much more
so much
to
more.
it,
Yeah.
and the science behind it all, and how our bodies respond to certain things.
Yes. And so this is where, Crystal, you fit in so well with Monica's training, because Monica, you're a board certified gynecologist, and you now practice integrative gynecology at the Healing Space. And that's, I know you had studied at University of Texas Medical School in San Antonio for med school, as well as I can't ever say it, OBGYN. And then later you went on to the Andrew Weil program,
Nice.
the Center for Integrative Medicine Fellowship at the University of Arizona.
Yes.
And so I'm curious how you got into this holistic, that we're not only the physical body.
I think I grew up in a very simple way. I grew up on a farm, really kind of in the middle of nowhere, up in the panhandle of Texas. And my life was pretty simple growing up. We knew our family doctor. He knew all of us. He delivered all the kids in my family, and my family ate the food from our gardens. Everything was just pretty simple. And somehow through all of that, I knew I wanted to go into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, shortly after getting into medicine, I was a little disheartened by it, because I saw that in modern times, patients, and then this is certainly no fault to the doctors, this is just the system, but oftentimes patients are rushed through. There's very little time to really understand what's driving the medical condition that the patient's experiencing. And I had never been exposed to the stress that I really became exposed to when I was in college. And from that point forward, I really came to know stress, and I came to realize, just on a personal level, how much stress and the lives that we're leading really can impact our health. And when I was a freshman in college, I was diagnosed with just a very mild case of psoriasis. But I could just watch. Anytime I had finals or I had tests where I was under a lot of stress, my psoriasis would act up. And so I just came to know on a very personal level that how I was living directly impacted my health. And so I think just knowing that, certainly the science has come to show that that's absolutely true. We have lots of evidence backing this mind-body connection. But knowing that on a deep level, I realized that that was just not something that was really appreciated in modern medicine.
Yeah.
And I really felt like, in order to be the physician I wanted to be, I needed to incorporate the mind-body connection in what I was doing. And, I think the doctors that are practicing in the standard fashion, they're doing their best. But I personally wanted to be able to incorporate more this mind-body connection into my practice. And so that was really what led to my interest in integrative medicine, and how I eventually left a traditional practice and change to one where I could spend more time and get to know each patient on a deeper level so that we could really understand the processes that were driving their problems.
Yeah. Both of you kind of went through your own, because there's nothing like going through it yourself and noticing, because it's so subtle. We don't always know what to talk about, or what to study. But then when we're going through it, modern medicine is, I think, Monica, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 300 years old. And there's thousands of years of plant medicine and food and lifestyle and living collectively that modern medicine didn't know how to address, and I know when I was trying to become a mom, I had asked the doctors, well, what can I do? I mean, there's got to be something else. And they were like, I don't know, you can maybe try acupuncture. I heard that might work. And so that started my journey on, finding other ways that have been used by indigenous people. Yeah. People in other countries that maybe the pharmaceutical industry isn't as prominent. But also pass down wisdom. And that's how I found you, Monica, basically, was in this search for someone who didn't treat just the physical.
Yeah.
And
that was me too. I had questions and the doctors couldn't answer them.
Yep. Yeah.
And I was just like, because I was like, so what do you do? If there's not a pill or a machine that can fix this, so what do you do? And it was for me, it even went deeper than what do you do? I needed to know what caused it. And they couldn't answer that question. And that bothered me. Like, how did I get to where I am now? And because I want to avoid being there again. And they couldn't answer the deeper questions for me. And I don't know if they couldn't or just didn't, the way the system, like Monica was mentioning, it's not really set up where it allows your doctor to spend that kind of time and research with you on figuring out how to answer those kind of questions. And I just happened to be a student of research. And so my mind just operated in that perspective. And to me, I just needed more. And that's kind of where the quest began, because I needed to know more information.
Yeah. So for each of you, and Monica, I'll ask you this first, because of your specializing in gynecology, not that women are that simple, but what makes a woman's wellness maybe more complicated or complex? Especially because we go through the stages of, puberty and then pregnancy and post-pregnancy, and then we have menopause, and there's such big
changes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think it's complicated on many levels. I mean, absolutely what you're mentioning. There's definitely all the stages, and our bodies change so much in each stage. And of course, every month our hormones change when we're cycling, when we're ovulating. And then there's all the social issues and how all of those issues impact our physical health and our hormones and all of it. And we're certainly learning more as time goes that, again, this mind-body connection really is just so powerful. But we know for certain that if a woman's under significant stress, that it can impact her cycle. She may stop having her period. So this is just an example.
And then all the ramifications of not having your cycle, off cycle.
Absolutely.
And all the other things. And Crystal, what have you sort of learned about women specifically in wellness?
two things. One is just confusion,
Yeah.
not understanding their body or knowing what their body's supposed to feel like. Because a lot of us have operated under stress or operate in imbalances, operated in such a bad state that we don't realize how good it's supposed to feel.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of confusion of how like, a lot of people don't know they're sick till it's like seriously sick.
Yeah.
You don't realize how your body's off balance, whether it's your hormones or your vitamin levels or mineral levels. And so it can start off as a small issue that, becomes a big issue later, simply because there's confusion around what does well feel like.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest issue. Most women come to me because now at the point they get to me, normally is they're frustrated because they've tried to Google their way through it or whatever. They tried everything and now they're like, help me.
Dr. Google. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, I need help, and I've tried what my friends are doing and that didn't work. And just confusion about, how their bodies are different. Like you and your friend both could be on the same diet, but what's good for her body, not necessarily is good for your body, just because everyone's body is uniquely made different. And they just may not be at a level that you on, whether it's a hormonal level or a vitamin level, or there may not be certain toxins. I mean, our gut microbiomes are different, so our genealogy is different. So just a lack of just confusion from not understanding what wells feel like, but just a confusion on what works specifically for their body or understanding their specific body.
Crystal, you said something that I want to go back to. We did a show on depression and race, and one of the therapist speakers was talking about, based on how, if you're from a marginalized community, how the basic, you may not even know you're under stress.
Yes.
Because that's just, standard operating procedure, right?
Yes,
you don't
exactly.
know that what the impact of microaggression, the impact of not enough research done for certain races, just like I think now we're doing more research. Monica, you can correct me or speak to it, that we're doing more research on women's health instead of using kind of this standard cutout of white males.
Absolutely. It's starting to open. Yes. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
And I would even say to my clients all the time, they wonder when they do a consultation, I was like, okay, it's good to know what foods you eat, but I always tell people, I need to know what is being consumed. What's being consumed as far as food, what's being consumed in your home environment, your family life, your work environment, because we consume a lot of things outside of food. Yeah. And that decides whether it could be a nutrient or a toxin to your body. And helping people understand that consumption is so far beyond being food, and you could be consuming a lot of stress, and how that consumption of stress affects your body just as if you're consuming junk food.
Yeah.
And so helping people understand that all the time. I would say what's on your plate manifests in your life all the time. And what's on your plate as far as food, but also what's on your plate as far as like work and life and family or whatever. All the things on your plate manifest out in your life and in your body. Your body just responds to it. Just like I know there's a documentary I saw a couple of years ago. It talked about how the body keeps score. And it's so true. Like all the things that you're consuming throughout your life, not just food.
Yes. And I know that just from the mental health perspective, that trauma, our body holds trauma and our body reacts differently when we have trauma. And if it's, complex trauma, meaning extended over time. And Monica, what did you notice? Because I know what I saw in my office during the pandemic. What did you notice as far as your patients with the pandemic?
This is most definitely, well, I'd say it's been the most stressful time that I've seen for patients at any point. Maybe Harvey would be right up there with it as far as Houston is concerned. But it's just chronic issues, lots of fatigue, problems sleeping,
Yeah.
lots of complaints of just pain in their bodies, just not feeling well.
Yeah.
And it seems to be pretty widespread, for sure.
Yeah. And you bring up pain in the body, which is something one of the therapists had said in that episode, that we don't realize that depression and anxiety can cause pain, physical pain in our body. And so we may think it's something to take Tylenol for, but it may not be just pain relief,
right?
That we need.
Mm-hmm.
What can maybe the average woman do pre-menopause? And I know this is not an easy question to answer because it's so broad, but something anyone can do that's the first step in knowing how to even create a day based around wellness, like the first step.
I think the very first step is to start with just one thing, first and foremost, and give it priority. For example, start with making certain you have a regular bedtime and being very consistent with that. I'll tell you that it sounds like such a simple thing, but I find that so many people, especially people who are suffering with depression, if they'll set up a very
your microphone, I think.
Can you hear me? If they'll set up a regular routine around sleep, this one thing can make a big difference in how they feel. But I think to bring back the most basic things, I think we really forget about those basic things. Are you eating your vegetables?
Yeah.
Are you getting at least, I know not everybody has access to fresh vegetables and fruits all the time, but when you do, are you trying to get several colors during the day from your vegetables and fruits? Are you getting some just basic movement in? If you can get 2.5 hours of walking per week, we know that is a standalone treatment for depression.
Yes.
And compared it to medication.
Yeah.
So just doing those simple things, like making sure you're eating as healthy as you can.
Yeah.
Prioritizing sleep and getting movement in on a regular basis. I think that's where the money is, really.
Yes.
I love
it. Crystal, I see a lot of your posts on Instagram that talk about many women's relationship with food and weight,
Yes.
and you've brought in all of these other connections of, I don't know, they're so clever. So I don't know if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, because I think because a lot of people, and it goes back to the confusion part. And confusion because we do live in an age where there's so much information out there. But because there's so much information out there, I think that people think that there's a certain standard. And if they're not operating on what's the standard, that they're not doing the right thing. And so that causes another level of stress and pressure. So I'm really cautious about people understanding that your wellness journey is your wellness journey and no one else's. There's no standard for your wellness journey. Sure, there are basics, just like Monica just listed, like sleep and eating food and stuff like that. But really, I try to eliminate the stress that people have built up around it, because there's a certain look that people think is well. But I'm very honest with my clients that when I was diagnosed with my autoimmune disease and was close to death almost, I was a size 0. So, and running marathons, and so it's not, also just really helping people understand that that not a certain pressure to look but be well, and also just have a understanding that there's no way to, because people think that they have to be perfect, because then they adopt I have to eat perfect if I'm gonna be well. And so I like the what I learned when I was in integrative school is, we call it the crowd out method, that I like to share with my clients. If you eat a donut and coffee for breakfast, they laugh at me when they start with me. I was like, okay, continue your donut and coffee, but add a banana in there. Eat the banana first. And eventually over time, what you'll notice is happening is that as your body is getting those nutrients, you're not going to crave or even be able to consume a lot of the other stuff. So you crowd out the bad stuff with good stuff, and eventually you eliminate it, versus being so stressed on, I have to stop eating this, and this. Focus on just adding a lot of good stuff. And that way you naturally wean off the bad stuff. And so just really kind of just like focusing on people on that, and just and not feeling so pressured to do so many things, like she just mentioned, like Monica just mentioned, so many things all at once. People are coming, they want to start a new diet, start a new exercise plan, and drink a gallon of water and take all these supplements. And I'm like, that's too much. Why are you doing all that?
That's one thing at a time.
One thing at a time. Yes.
Yes. And so they get so confused when they get a plan from me, because I break it down in phases. I'm like, okay, these are phases that we're going to operate. We're going to do a transitional method. I don't want you to change your whole life or what you've been doing for 20 years in the next 20 days. It's just crazy. And so really just kind of eliminate that part, because I said, then you're going to get stressed out. Your cortisol levels are going to peak. Your body's going to be full of inflammation. You're not going to be well.
Yeah.
So just helping people understand that aspect, because I think they miss that part out, and they're just so used to wellness having a certain look or being perfect, and that's not the case.
Monica, what made you add in, I guess, the supplement stuff, because I know you do the integrative stuff you work with is also evidence-based, because we hear all the time, oh, that's not FDA regulated, there are no studies, and don't take the vaccine. There's all of that stuff going on.
Yes.
So when you're using evidence-based supplements,
yes,
how did you go about, was that something you learned at Dr. Wiles in his program, or were you kind of already on that path?
No, I definitely learned it through the Integrative Medicine Fellowship. And I was so fortunate just to train with one of the best, Dr. Tiarona Lodog, and definitely count her as my primary mentor, and Dr. Andrew Weil also, certainly. But I'll tell you, there's a concept in integrative medicine that the less risky a healing modality is, the less evidence you need for it. And the more risky it is, the more evidence you need. So, for example, as Crystal's talking about healthy eating, what could the downside really be? We don't need as much evidence, right, with that. But definitely, some of the supplements, we do have to certainly be quite careful. And so, because some of them, well, actually, a lot of our medications were developed from herbs. Right?
Yes.
All of our statins for high blood pressure, they come from the original statin, which was red yeast rice. So, we have to be cautious with supplements. I definitely think.
Yes.
What I like to do is I go to a website, consumerlab.com. And this is a good resource for everybody. Anybody can subscribe. I think it's about $40 a year. And what they do, they go through all of the evidence for each supplement. And then they act as a third party to test the different supplements. And so over time, I've come to know which brands pretty much always pass the testing and which ones don't. But they're testing for purity. They're testing to make sure that the active ingredients are actually there. And they go through all the science. So I think that's an excellent resource for anybody.
What is that again, Monica?
Yes, it's consumerlab.com.
Okay.
But anytime a person's choosing a supplement, what you want to look for is third-party testing. That's the most important thing, because you want to know that it's as safe as we can get, since the FDA doesn't regulate the supplement industry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say that was one of the things the biggest thing I saw during COVID was people coming to me because they was taking all the supplements that they can Google that will boost your immune system, and just cautioning people, specifically like myself, I have Graves' disease. And, just helping understand, like, I don't need my immune system elevated. I'm already operating with it elevated. If I take this stuff, it can actually send me over into a flare up. And so helping people also understand that, what you're taking and do your body actually need it and how your body actually respond, because there are people who are my clients who had blood pressure medication or diabetic medication, and understand that there are certain supplements that you can't combine with your medications because it will be an adverse effect. So just really helping people also understand, are you taking the right supplement? Like you said, has it been tested? But also, is it something that your body actually can do based on what your current state of wellness is?
That's right.
But also understand that, because like elderberry is one that could be a plus, but it can also be a minus if you're on certain medications or you have an autoimmune. But if you don't, elderberry is good. And then it depends on where you're buying it and what name you're getting, because like she said, you have to know what you're taking as well as when it comes to the supplements.
So much of what y'all are saying is about awareness that there is something different, and that we actually have the ability to do some stuff on our own. I mean, I know we can Google on our own, but as far as the sleep habits, the movement, just moving your body, whether it's walking, vacuum, I don't know, whatever, moving your body, and eating good food. And then we hear all the time about, well, I don't know if they do it so much on TV. Those are like the big pharmaceutical companies. But we hear a lot, at least I do, about supplements. And then now to know that, I can go check out the supplement and look for third-party review, so that there's not an economic reason for the maker of the supplement to get you to take it. So they don't have to tell you everything so that you'll go buy it. They make money. So I think, Monica, that's what you're saying about third-party evidence.
Yes, absolutely. It's a way to prove safety. And a lot of the times with Consumer Lab, the best one may not be the most expensive. It may actually be the least expensive, right? So it's not about the price necessarily. There's plenty of very expensive ones that are junk. And I will say this, I will definitely say that the more I've practiced integrative medicine, the fewer supplements I recommend. So I really deeply believe that wellness is about balance. And then it's about, yes, we need to, of course, like we keep saying, move our bodies, have, get our sleep, eat healthy. But I think it's very much about having healthy relationships, finding our purposes in life, having a spiritual practice, whatever that is for each person. And having a healthy emotional situation.
Yeah. Well, and so that's where I come in.
Yes.
Is because I know for myself what being unhealthy in my emotions does for me, and I see it with my clients, and I think the desire to take care of yourself, even in the smallest way, that's an emotional decision.
Mm-hmm.
That is self-worth issue. And when we decide that we're worthy of health and wellness, not just somewhere to go when we're sick, but wellness, enjoyment, when we have the right to be happy in our relationships, and have balance and all of that, I think we need to choose that we're worth making that effort. Um, so each of you, I mean, in your own way, you were motivated by the need to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Same reason I went into mental health. It was a need to take care of myself. I needed to know more.
Yep.
Um,
I always say I became the teacher that I needed.
exactly. Yes.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. I like that. Crystal, you said you just kind of glossed over your paralysis.
Yes. So that's how I got into marathon running.
This book, The Finish Line Was Just the Start.
And that book was because of my work that I did with you.
Oh, well, go get this book. No.
Because I never wanted to share my story because I thought it would when I came to you is I realized that a part of my not being well is because I was holding in a lot of myself and not living in my truth by speaking it because I thought sharing, I guess, the bad or the negative would discredit me and I had this persona of being this healthy, this perfect person, and really the book came about because it was me sharing my story beyond Facebook and Instagram posts.
Yeah.
People knew the perfect runner and the perfect nutritionist, but they didn't know the dirty side, I guess, to it all. And the book was really, actually, I used to not talk about it, but I journaled it. And so the book was actually my diary that I just made. And that was really just doing the other part of my work because I realized a lot of my stress is because I was holding in a lot of stuff and that caused a lot of stress. And so that's where the book came in. And in the book, I do talk about and I said finish line just start because I looked at my life as a race. And I had, I think there were parts, like the colon issue was my first part. And that was probably I always call that my training ground to who I became going through that issue. But, the different mile markers in my life, which was I ended up, having paralysis. I end up, experiencing life stress, like the death of my mom and losing a child. And then this autoimmune disease that hit me out of nowhere. And it's just just so dealing with that, just like different mile markers of your life and not realizing that all of those different mile markers becomes your race of life. And even when you think you're at the finish, you're really just beginning the next race. Yeah. And so that's kind of where that book came about. Because a lot of people thought when they got the book, oh, Crystal's going to tell us about marathon running. But it was really to talk about my life for the first time so people could see beyond the person that I had portrayed in the post, because I didn't think I was being, I was not being, I tell you, it wasn't that I was lying, but I wasn't being authentic because I wasn't sharing it all. I was only giving them side pieces and sound bites of what my life was. and just the good parts. And so
So the human, you
the
share
human
the
side,
human
yeah.
in you.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Because when I got sick, people couldn't understand why. They was like, "Well, you're stressed." I'm like, "Yes, I'm stressed."
Yeah.
And I realized that I never showed stress,
Mhm.
externally, so people didn't realize how stressed I was, and I probably didn't either because stress was all I knew
Mhm.
from childhood.
Yeah.
But I realized as I became an adult that I no longer had to, that's like I said, through the work I realized that that little girl didn't have to be the same person as an adult. Like I didn't have to have the same armor and all that kind of good stuff. So that book was, I guess, the other part of my healing,
Mhm.
and the other part of my wellness journey is just
Yeah.
sharing.
Sharing. And I do think that is something that women probably, it's specifically, like we like to talk and we learn a lot from each other. And the more vulnerable we can be with each other, it's as if we're always waiting for permission.
Mhm.
And then hearing it from a friend or a colleague or a woman you respect,
Mhm.
you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I have permission now to do certain things. And speaking, I know, Monica, you've had some experience with how we have the energy body as well,
Yes.
and it's not just what we can see, touch, measure.
Mhm.
And the energy body can affect our physical health.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so things with the thyroid can be, um, going to sound crazy to people, trapped emotions, uh, and how our womb, Monica, you said earlier about when we're under stress, you can stop having your period. You know,
Yes, that's
and
true.
so that shows right there the connection
Mhm.
that we have with our womb,
Yeah.
Right.
you know? And I don't know how we got so far off. And maybe it's because as women we're separated. Sorry, I sound like I'm getting really political. But I guess I am. We're separated from our bodies
We are.
It's true.
and our body of
And
our
it's
way of
taught like that.
knowing.
We're
Yes,
taught to be that way.
yes,
It's not to be that way. Well, I think it's the scientific paradigm, right?
Yes.
That was
Yes.
the premise of it all, is that the mind and the body are two totally separate things and there is no connection. And if we're all told that from the time we're alive, it's
Mhm.
hard to believe anything otherwise.
Yes. And I think I will speak for myself and many women I know that there's so much shame
Yeah.
around the body
Yeah.
Right.
that it's almost as if we deny we have a body, and often I think so many of our emotional stressors come from our relationship with our bodies,
That's very
which affect the worth we may give to someone else as opposed to ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if either of you can speak to that, or I
I'm
know I
just
always get
I'm in your amen corner, like, yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I think and it's trained from us in so many different ways. I remember, and it's like totally off. The first time that I heard it
Mhm.
was I was at a vagina monologue, and they were mentioning, I mean, how men, it's okay for men to masturbate.
Mhm.
It's why they felt more comfortable speaking up in board meetings as adults, because as young kids they weren't taught that that was shameful, but
Mhm.
females were taught that it was shameful for
Yes.
pleasure, and so it limit our ability to speak up for ourselves. And that's the first time that that was brought to my attention, of how certain situations of how you're trained and taught
Mhm.
because of just the gender that you were born into can
Yes.
connect to how you then become an emotional person as an adult. or a emotional person as an adult, or not living in your truth, just simply because of how you were taught or trained to think because you're a certain sex.
Yes.
And so, and it just, and then from there, just then, because of all that stuff you're holding in and changing. When I was reading for the first time, when I picked up Louise Hay's book, I was like, this is it.
Yeah.
Because it's, you can heal yourself. It was just like, oh my God, like showing just the connections of certain elements to certain emotional connections. And that I was just like, this is what I've been looking for all my life, to explain like why certain things were happening to me. But it just showing how, like I said before, your body manifests the things that are going on that you consume in your life outside of food.
Yes. Yeah.
And those things you consume are ideas or certain standards that you adopted because of that's what you were taught to adopt, or that's how the world or the environment and society that you grew up in.
Yes. So many messages from
so many messages
outside,
everywhere around us.
Yes. Monica, one of when I first came to see you, I think our appointment was like an hour long, and the intake was several pages and asking about different things. And you really spent time asking about my life as a whole human being, and not just as, I guess the physicalness, age, race, weight, all of that. And going through perimenopause and menopause, how you were able to sort of normalize the ups and downs. Oh, here's a question I have for you, Monica, on hormones.
Yes.
Women's hormones, and how much they affect our emotions.
Oh, well, there's just so much neat information, Rabia, that's coming out just over the last few years, basically showing that about 20% of women, as they're making a transition into menopause, actually develop an anxiety or depression just because they're making the transition.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we all kind of intuitively could assume that, but it was just, it's been brand new information to me, and I've been doing this for a long time. So yeah, we have the science now to say, yeah, that's absolutely right. And we know 20% of women don't have any symptoms as they make the transition, but for the rest of us who do, the other percent, maybe an antidepressant's not the best answer.
Yes.
So.
Yes, I can attest to that. That getting my hormones in check, after, I guess, stabilizing, then that's not even considering all of the societal messages of being perimenopausal and menopausal, and we're sort of aged out.
Right.
Vitality. I mean, there's so many things. And I think where each of your integrative works really come in is addressing all of the layers that affect our well-being. And there are different layers for women than there are for men. There just are. We have some advantages and they have some advantages. But we need to know that it's not one size fits all, and that everyone reacts this way. And if you're when your estrogen is low, you're going to be like this, or we're just so complex and unique. And I appreciate so much your gift to the world to practice integrative care. Combining old and new, and
East and West.
Along with, because I also know that socioeconomic factors play a role in our health and wellness, as they do in moods, as does race, as does education. You know, there's so many things that come into it. And I think y'all speak to so much of that with the people that come and see you and are lucky enough to get to spend time with each of you and learn, you know. And I know not everyone is in Houston or in Texas and can do this. But just the consumerlab.com, I think, Monica, is news to me. And then Crystal, your own journey of Graves' disease, you know, your journey with colon issues, with family history, with paralysis, and then all of the not knowing you were in stress.
Yeah.
You know, not knowing that your baseline, just at survival level, was high enough to affect your physical well-being.
Yeah.
You know, it's just beautiful. I
Listen to the doctors. I was like the doctors when my colon issue, it wasn't, oh, because she ate bad. So they couldn't really answer my question.
Yeah.
It was really that I didn't realize that my whole childhood was full of trauma.
Yes.
Which stressed out my colon. You know, it's just like, you know, so you just never, and it was just the change of eating fresh foods, because I grew it growing fruits and vegetables as well. But when I went to college, I had Hostess and Diet Coke for the first time. And it took just that little bit of change to really knock your whole system off. So just not understanding from living in stress for 18, 19 years, and then changing one dynamic that can throw your whole system to a whole nother level of off.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing as a common thing, and maybe this is just the way life is right now, is just the effects of stress. And not always that we're at fault, you know, for all of it, but that we can also do one little thing to start with, and know that we deserve to be well. We are worth working for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I tell people, when you look at the top 3 to 4 illnesses that are deadly, the factors that are common amongst them is stress and inflammation, and stress and inflammation go hand in hand. So when you look at that, you know, you have to start paying attention to that level of stress and deciding if you want to move beyond that. One of the affirmations that I always give my clients as a thing that they have to do is I make them write on a Post-it note and post it in whatever spot that they get a chance to see every day, whether it's on your steering wheel. Mine is on my steering wheel in my car, whether it's in your bathroom mirror, but the affirmation is, I deserve more than temporary happiness. I am worthy of permanent joy.
Oh, that's great.
And that looks like, you know, it could be the permanent, you know, the temporary happiness is eating that piece of chocolate cake. You know, it may give, but deciding, now you can still eat the piece of cake, but you now are aware of, do I want to decide to take this temporary level of satisfaction, or do I think I'm more deserving of having, you know, permanent joy? Do I want to really go into this stressful conversation with this person that I can avoid for the benefit of having permanent joy? So, you know, it may, you know, I want to get this off my chest real quick because it gives you that temporary level of satisfaction, but does it give you the permanent place of joy? And so that's one thing that I try to do as a practice of, you know, less stress in your life. You know, just being aware of it makes it all the difference. Not saying you're not going to act one way or the other, but just having a level of awareness.
Yes.
And being able to decide which one you want to choose in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I see we're out of time here. Monica, anything you want to add, or Crystal, right? Anything? Go
Don't
ahead.
underestimate the little things. That's what I would say. And just we all have access to our breaths, right? And sometimes just stopping and having some deep breaths and spending times with those that you love and you care about. Don't underestimate the healing power of that.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Love is a healer. So I want to thank both of you, Crystal and Monica, for sharing some of your wisdom. And I want to thank everyone watching for tuning in. And what I know for sure is that none of us does this life thing by ourselves. And none of us does this when we only have bits and pieces of ourselves, or when we see ourselves as broken, unlovable, or powerless. And so I want you to remember that you're a part of a whole, and you come from miracle, and you matter. You really, really matter. So thank you, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you, Monica and Crystal.
Rabia.
Bye.
Nice to meet you, Monica.
You too, Crystal. Take care. Thanks.
Bye.